UFC Vegas 109.
Lock
We
and
got
load.
back-to-back Apex cards taking place. In the main event here, Roman Dolidze takes on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Big implications for the future of the very stacked middleweight division. We recently previewed what's going on at 185 as we were entering that Abu Dhabi card. We now have post-nut clarity after seeing how the RDR versus Whitaker fight played out, with RDR once again getting his hand raised inside the octagon. It was a great fight. It was a close one, but RDR continues the winning streak. You have to imagine that he's going to get a huge fight coming up in the near future. Now, what's going to happen with the winner of this main event? First things first, DDP takes on Khamzat Chimaev August 15th. All right, the winner of that will be the UFC middleweight champion. Who are they going to fight next? We'll see how their bodies hold up. You know, we'll see if there's any injuries leaving that fight. There could be plenty of time for some number one contenders bouts to take place, but a lot of people feel that the winner of Nasruddin Imavov and Caio Bahalo will be next to fight for the belt. And I don't know if maybe there'll be another fight before they fight for the belt, meaning that the winner of Dolidze and Hernandez should fight the winner of Imavov and Bahalo. That's what I would like to see. Let's just say, for comparison's sake, Hernandez goes out here and defeats Dolidze. He would then be on an 8-fight winning streak, whereas if Imavov defeats Caio, he would be on a 5-fight winning streak, although you would have an argument that Imavov has the bigger wins, right? He has bigger names under his belt. And if Caio were to defeat Imavov, he would then be on an 8-fight winning streak since joining the UFC. He'd be undefeated in the octagon, but I would argue to you that his list runs a little weaker. That's my opinion there, but there's just so many ways this can go. And again, do not overlook RDR. I mean, if they're going to make him win 2 more fights before fighting for the belt, especially if he's going out there and pulling off some more finishes in the near future, I don't know, man. That's a lot of work they're making him put in since joining the UFC. So Sean Strickland and Israel Adesanya, they're not matched up with anybody. These are major chess pieces in this division. Their name holds a lot of weight. You could throw Robert Whitaker next to them as well, even coming off that exciting loss. Besides that, Cannonier's taking on MVP. MVP's bumping up to this weight class. Jared Cannonier, another crafty veteran, a dangerous veteran that's on coming in off a win. Paulo Costa just had a big bounce back victory. He looked pretty good doing it too. He has the name. Brendan Allen just had a big W. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's just so much that you could do in this division right now. And I want to hear what you guys have to say. Comment below. I want to see some matchmaking going on, and you guys tell me who you think should be fighting for the belt next, how you want to see this all play out, and let me know who you think is going to be the middleweight champion of the world in, let's say, 9-10 months or to a year's time. Who do you think will be the reigning UFC middleweight champion? Because I mean, there's some real threats to this belt, and you guys know DDP is my guy. He follows me on IG. A little comment back and forth. That's a big deal when the UFC middleweight champion hits you up with the follow, besides the fact that I was already a huge fan of his. So I'm hoping DDP reigns supreme, and I think that he's just so underrated because of his herky-jerky, awkward style. People, they throw shade at him, but he's the man in my opinion, and we'll get to that Khamzat breakdown in the near future. So I'll meet you guys in the comment section, and with that all being said, we're going to get right into this thing. If you're new to my channel, please smash that subscribe button. You guys can expect this weekly content coming your way. If everybody can hit the like button, it means a lot to me. Go follow me on my social media. And of course, if you guys want my official targets, you guys know you can email me or shoot me a DM on Instagram. And I also have that promo running. If you sign up through my referral link to Bovada, I will give you my entire slate for any card that you want. All right, guys, let's go jump into the first fight.
The teller.
So the first fight we'll jump into is taking place in the welterweight division. Both these fighters come in off KO losses. Uros Medic takes on Gilbert Urbina. Medic, we knew that he had issues in the grappling department, right? We saw what Miktabek Orolbey did to him. If you remember years ago, Jalen Turner actually pulled off a submission against him as well. And really, the verdict was that he needed to work on his grappling, but he was a very dangerous striker. And as long as he could keep the fight standing, there was a great chance that not only would he defeat you, but he could knock you out, right? Then he goes out there in his last bout and he gets finished up in brutal fashion by Punilehi Soriano. I'll tell you what, Soriano is a very hard hitter, and the move that he made from coming down to the welterweight division from 185 was an excellent choice. And I think it was just one of those fights where he got caught. I chalk it up a little bit more to that because Seriano can crack. Now, on the other side, Urbina goes out there in his last bout and looks so gun-shy against a fighter in Charlie Raki before he eventually was finished up in the first round. It was alarming. Okay, he seemed to be intimidated in there, and that was just not the Urbina that I thought we were going to see. Urbina, a young fighter coming up through the Ultimate Fighter. He has two siblings, two brothers that are professional fighters, comes from a fighting family. He was a fighter that I thought that he would eventually put it together to some extent, and I've completely turned my back on him. I just don't think that he has it. I don't care that he's young. I don't see that there's a lot of room for growth. I don't think that he's a UFC caliber fighter. And you also note he just doesn't have any respectable victories. When you run his resume back, you could try to argue that his losses are somewhat respectable when you see like Brian Battle and Sean Brady on there, but dissect the victories. There's just nothing to talk about. Orion Kosi, Michael Gilmore, these are very low-level fighters. I think that Medic is a step up in competition compared to any of his other victories. And I think that once he feels the power of Medic, he's going to react similarly to how he did against Raki. All right. If you want to play devil's advocate real quick, I would also note that Medic doesn't have really any respectable victories as well. When you dissect them, I mean, an older Tim Means, Matthew Semmelsberger really faded out around that time, and he was down in that fight before showing heart and coming back and getting the third round finish. You give him credit for that as well. But Omar Morales, Alan Cruz, these are just, there's not a lot to talk about here. We mentioned the losses, and we need to see more from him as far as improving himself as a commodity in this division. But when you break down the tape, it does check out. I think that he will be the fighter that imposes his will. He'll land the bigger shots, and I think that he can find a KO. I'm going to pick him to bounce back with a knockout victory. 8 of his 10 victories come by way of KO, while Gilbert Urbina only has 1 knockout out of his 7 victories. So I just think that there's a less chance that we see Urbina test the chin of a recently hurt Medic. And I also don't think that Urbina is going to have enough success using any type of wrestling or grappling. Medic obviously has continuously been working on that. It should look better than ever, and Urbina's never really impressed me too much there anyway. So stylistically, I think that this should be a throwdown type of fight where we see Medic land some damage and get an earlier finish. Medic finish. And, I'll say this too. I know I've said this in the past, but Medic reminds me so much of Ludovic Klein. For whatever reason, man, both those fighters have always reminded me of each other, and we'll see if both of them can start to bounce back with some victories and live up to some of the potential that they once had. Medic is a minus 300 currently. He opened up around a minus 210, so we see action coming in on him, even when he was as big of a favorite as he was to open up, and it's somewhat warranted to me. I think that he should be a decent favorite going into this fight. Once you start passing minus 300 or so, I think it could be a little bit of a reach. Just with him coming in off the damage, maybe Urbina can hurt him there. Maybe we see him have success with his grappling. But all in all, I would say I have this fight capped right around Medic being a minus 300. So where it is right now, I think it's pretty accurate. He should be the favorite. I think that he gets a finish. And I'll say in the first round, Medic cracks him with the big left hand and gets a KO. The number 14th ranked women's bantamweight fighter, Joselyne Edwards, takes on Priscila Cachoeira. Priscila comes in off another knockout victory. It's kind of crazy to think that more than half of her wins come by way of KO. It's a sight that is rarely seen in women's mixed martial arts. She went out there and she cracked Joselyne Nunez in the first round with that nasty uppercut. And we've seen her do this before. Like I said, man, you think back to the Ariane Lipski to Silva victory that she had. She knocked out Gina Mazzani. She knocked out Shauna Dobson. I mean, she's came in there, and she's came in there as an underdog and has shaken things up. And it's great to see, right? If you remember, she came into the UFC. She made her UFC debut against Valentina Shevchenko. She took that fight on short notice, and she was beaten down before eventually subbed at the end of the second round, and followed that up with 2 losses. And it seemed that we would never see her again. And she's gone on to have, I would say, a very successful career for what you could have expected from her. Okay, I'm not talking about making a run in any division or whatnot, but I'm talking about going out there, landing a KO, getting us to jump off our chairs, get a little bit of a chuckle out of it. Okay, she's done that. She's shown to be very vulnerable to being submitted. You're going to want to keep an eye on that. She puts herself in vulnerable situations as she's very aggressive and she's lacking with her grappling. I could easily see Edwards pulling off a rear naked choke or something like that. She's shown good development with her grappling. She's just 29. She's been getting in work at King's MMA, and I think that this is a chick that really is dedicated to the sport, and she's taken her game to another level. She's going to have a nice reach advantage going on here. If this fight goes the distance, I feel very comfortable that Edwards will be the fighter that's landing more volume and just controlling this fight, maybe mixing in a takedown here and there. If we see a finish, like we said, we could see that submission from Edwards, but you got to be a little careful. Maybe Priscila once again shakes the world up. I wouldn't bank on that. We've never seen Edwards finished via strikes. She seems pretty tough and durable. She's decently technically sound. I won't bank on that. Maybe Priscila could land significant damage throughout some rounds to snag them up. I don't see it, though. I don't see it. I think that Edwards is a safe play here. She should win this fight. She's the much more balanced and polished fighter. And you also have to mention the fact that she's 29, entering her prime, getting better, rapidly better and better, while Priscila is nearing 37. I think she's a couple weeks away from turning 37 years old. Okay, that's an issue. Statistically, when you crunch those numbers, there's not a lot of success going on there. A little bit of an undersized, older fighter that relies on landing a knockout strike in the women's bantamweight division. That's not a solid recipe. Give me Joselyne Edwards to win a decision here. I'm going to say that Priscila makes it to the final bell. The sub will be in play for Edwards, but I will say this fight goes to a decision and Edwards wins a unanimous decision, while in the meantime, Priscila will give it her all. She'll throw a couple heavy strikes here and there, but it won't be enough to snag up any rounds. Edwards opened up right around a minus 350. We're seeing this line creep back down. She's now right around a minus 255. And I mean, I would keep an eye on this line to see how far it trends down and see what kind of value you can get there. Wouldn't really be aiming or pushing any of you guys to target the plus action on Priscila. Again, I wouldn't want to be in a situation where you're banking on a woman's fighter to land big power strikes and to potentially need to get a KO. I would not want to be in that situation, especially based off where the line is. It would have to be even way, way better value than what we're seeing. The youngster, Elijah Smith, looks to step back inside the octagon and build off a UFC debut victory he had over Vince Morales. He'll be taking on Toshiomi Kazama here in the bantamweight division. And if you remember that Vince Morales fight, yeah, Elijah Smith didn't run through him. Okay, if you ask me, he convincingly took 2 of the 3 rounds, but he did drop a round. You take a look at the stats, it played out relatively close. Understand that Vince Morales was much more mature. He had about 3 times the amount of fighting experience. Okay, Elijah Smith is a young kid, and it's okay that he looked somewhat human. I think you could still take a lot of pros away from that performance. We saw once again, and I already knew that Smith had this in him. He's an absolute dog. This isn't just like a flashy, athletic type of fighter that has to front run you and knock you out or have early success or he's done. No, Elijah Smith can bite down on the mouthpiece and go to war. All right, he's willing to involve himself in wild scrambles, and a lot of times he ends up in dominant position. He'll look to land heavy on you with his hands, and you may tag him back a little bit, but I mean, he's typically the fighter that's landing more so on you. We saw it in Dana White's Contender Series. We saw it again in that debut performance. I think he has a very bright future. I had the pleasure of chatting it up with his dad, Gail Smith, who fought on The Ultimate Fighter a long time ago. I watched that whole season, and we chatted it up a little bit after that Dana White's Contender Series fight. And Elijah Smith has been learning the fight game from him from a very young age. And one thing that I like that Smith has going for himself here is he has that wrestling background. Okay, he's very comfortable in grappling situations, and he's not going to gas out. You take a look at Kazama's last fight, which was against a fighter that I'm very familiar with. I had the pleasure to chat it up a little bit with Charlan Post-Gregorio, who represents Greece. Of course, a little bit of a connection there with me. And I know who Gregorio is as a fighter. Okay, he has plus power. He can hurt and knock you out. And we saw him hurt Kazama in the second round. But if we're being blatantly honest, Gregorio is not that guy. Okay, he doesn't have the grappling and wrestling abilities. I don't care how much work he's been doing or putting in as of recently with Sarah Longo and all that. He's not that guy. For whatever reason, us Greeks invented wrestling, but the sport completely dissipated from our country, and kickboxing and striking is a much more strong suit of the country. You're starting to see the MMA game go over there, but if I'm being completely honest, you're not going to see a lot of high-level Greek grapplers in mixed martial arts anytime soon. And in that fight, not only did he show that his grappling was low level, but Gregorio has a questionable gas tank, Okay, and then after he didn't get that KO, he basically sat there and flopped like a fish until he fell into the triangle choke, and Kazama took advantage of that. Now, Kazama has shown to have some submission abilities. We've seen him prevail quite a bit, but it's against low-level fighters when he's pulling off those submissions. And we've seen that when he had to step up in competition, okay, as he came into his UFC debut from the road to UFC, Rinya Nakamura knocked him out. Garrett Armfield made quick work of him. And as I mentioned, even Gregorio hurt him in that second round and almost finished him. It's very likely, in fact, that's going to be my pick here, that Elijah Smith is going to hurt him with his hands, because Elijah Smith has nasty boxing skills and he'll have the ability to keep this fight standing. So I think that this is just a great match for Smith. I'm happy that the UFC is giving him an opponent like this. He's a young kid. He's 22 years old. Let him marinate in the UFC, and then we can give him big matchups down the line. The only time we've seen him take an L is where he got finished up by Reyes Cortez in the third round, and that was another fight where we saw Smith kind of get involved in a war and throw caution to the wind, which he will do. He doesn't fight very safely, and with time, as he matures, he will figure out how to do that even more so. But Smith will find the mark, and I think that he will knock Kazama out in the first round, first or second round. I'm looking at like an under 1.5 on this fight. We're looking at a much superior fighter in Smith, who he's going to get his hand raised. Now, early opening line, we see Smith open up as a -700, and he is now a -500 favorite. So the line is starting to dip down on him. But I mean, depending on how you want to look at that, I mean, he opened up as a huge favorite as a -700. I think that we probably see him. Maybe it comes down a little bit more, but I would not expect his line to be anything under like a -400 or 450. So if anything, we may see it curve back the other way. I think that whatever you want to do with this, I think it's a very safe play. I know he's young. There could be some growing pains, but I'm telling you, he's a superior fighter here. Gabriella Fernandes comes into this bout with some real momentum behind her, as her last 2 victories have aged very well. She's set to take on Julija Stoliarenko here. Stoliarenko is a bit of a one-trick pony, if we're being honest, and that one trick that she has with her jiu-jitsu, specifically with the armbar, is a real threat. She's a jiu-jitsu black belt, and if you're not up to par there, she can take advantage of you, like we saw her do against Molly McCann, which Molly McCann overall wasn't a bad fighter. Okay, she had plus power, plus striking, but we know her grappling was lacking so much. It's exactly what happened in that fight. She caught her with the first round submission with the armbar. She caught Jessica Rose Clark in an armbar a couple of years back. But there's been some really ugly losses that she has on her resume as well, though. And that kind of sheds light on the fact when you could defend her grappling, you could take advantage of her. And in her last fight, if you want to watch a fun female fight, you run the tape back on the Luana Carolina fight. That fight came down to the last couple seconds where Carolina broke her down and got the TKO stoppage, showing a lot of heart. So I believe without a doubt that Fernandes has the ability to avoid being subbed. I think her jiu-jitsu and her grappling defense has looked pretty decent down on the mat. We may have some questions about her wrestling and her takedown defense. We can go there, but her jiu-jitsu has been okay as far as her avoiding being subbed. She's never been subbed as a pro. And you take a look at what she's been doing, right? She's just submitted Kong Wang, who Kong Wang's been looking really good, who's a dynamic striker who's working on her overall game. But remember, Fernandes hurt her on the feet before setting up that rear naked choke. The victory over Carly Judice, even though it was a split decision fight, it was a close one, that has aged wonderfully. Judice is going to be a problem moving forward. I mean, I really believe that. She's young and she's showing some serious flashes with her striking, and she's a real athlete. So before that, the 2 losses, they don't look bad at all. Teresa Bleda and Jasmine Jasudavicius. I mean, these are real fighters. Bleda is very young, and some people may not be aware of who she is, but she's big. And in that fight, that's what we're talking about as far as the wrestling, right? The takedown defense. Bleda was able to take advantage of that aspect of her game, where she took her down 3 times on 10 attempts, but controlled her for about 11 minutes. That was a big difference in that fight. Fernandes wasn't able to keep it standing. Now, this is different, though. If the jiu-jitsu player here, Julija, can get this fight down to the mat, I'm not so much sure that she's going to be able to control her for extended periods of time and win a decision. I don't think that that's the case, but she will be very live to pull off a submission. Her jiu-jitsu is nasty, and she'll be live to pull off a sub throughout the fight if she can get the fight down to the mat. All in all, I say that Fernandes can avoid that situation and she could land damage. And there's potential that she'll even get a KO in this fight. I could see a knockout happening. I don't really typically say that or feel too comfortable saying that in a women's flyweight bout, but this fight very well can end in a TKO stoppage for Fernandes. I think that she's very live to finish the fight. All in all, though, I'm going to say that Stoliarenko makes it to the final bell, but takes a lot of damage. We'll probably see her bloodied up. She'll be fishing to get this fight down to the mat, but won't have enough success doing that. And Fernandes gets another victory here and continues to build on her momentum. This is a much more winnable fight than even anything that she's faced in the octagon so far. So she should have a good night here. We take a look at the odds. Fernandes opened up around a -500. The line's creeping down now. She's around a -400. And I believe that is specifically due to the fact that people are taking a shot on Stoliarenko to pull off a sub. When the fight goes down to the mat and she's just looking to snap an armbar or something like that, they're banking on that essentially. I mean, I guess you could say maybe they think she'll have enough success with her takedowns, but I don't see the wrestling being there throughout the fight. And this is another fight, another female fight where you potentially just wait to see if this line continues to trend downwards and you can get some value on Fernandes if she was able to go down to like a -300 or in the high -200s. I don't know if it's going to go there. That would be nice. And maybe we talk about this fight here on the prop edition video. There's a couple different ways we can go with that as well. The juice box. Julius Walker makes his return to the octagon. He'll be coming in off his first ever professional loss, which came by the way of Alonzo Menefield. And boy, was that a wild, sloppy war. He'll be taking on Raffael Cerqueira here. You want to talk about sloppy? We'll talk about his 2 UFC fights here in a second. But Julius Walker, that loss that he just took was a great learning experience. There's just no question about it. Anytime you go to the deep waters, you call that the deep waters, going into the 3rd round there in the octagon against a veteran like Menefield, where they were digging deep, they were fighting in the clinch. I think that that's going to do wonders for him. Now, we get it. He suffers from Frankenstein syndrome, to say the least. All right, he's one of those fighters that's hands are a little low at times. He's not the best athlete. He wants to close the distance, clinch you up, throw those knees up the middle. Similarly to RDR, I know a lot of people have been throwing hatred towards RDR, saying they underestimate him based on his fighting style. There's a little bit of that going on with Walker here. And speaking of Frankenstein syndrome, those kids, man, they didn't adjust to their body as it grew so quickly on them, right? They didn't adjust in time, and they're a little big and awkward. It kind of reminds me back to my football days, where the teller was out there in that powerful South Florida heat, cracking big old giraffe syndrome Marco and his knees, which the coach was always kissing up to Marco because he had that size, that height. He hit that growth spurt nice and early, and he was big as it gets. But me and the boys knew he was tripping over his shoelaces, and it took him forever to figure out his coordination. All right, there's a lot of that reeking from Walker, and Walker is a fighter. He's bounced back and forth from the heavyweight to the light heavyweight division. I truly believe he is a light heavyweight fighter, although you never know. Some of these fighters have advantages actually fighting up in weight. So maybe down the line we see him fill his frame out and settle in up in the heavyweight division. I mean, yeah, he does have a big frame, but this is that type of fighter that's not going to wow you with his athleticism. All right, he's going to look to awkwardly clinch you up, throw those knees, and throw those nice stiff jabs and straights, and he will be there to be countered, but he is shown to be very tough and to have a very good chin. When you think about the strikes that he absorbed from Menefield, I think he can absorb anything that Cerqueira throws his way. And at the very end of the day, first off, take a look at this number here. Cerqueira absorbing 14.43 strikes per minute due to the 2 L's that he took, where he was finished by Ibo Aslan and Modestus Bukauskas. He was finished up so quickly in both those fights. His record is so padded. Okay, before signing with the UFC, it's an extremely padded record. I mean, this guy, how can you have any faith in him? Okay, I don't care if he looks the part, if he looks athletic and has a nice build to him, and you say, oh, this is a fight up in the an upper weight class, maybe he can clip Julius with something. No, you cannot have any type of faith in this dude. He reeks of being a fraud. Okay, that's what I get from him. I think he just padded his record, and I do not believe he is a UFC caliber fighter, to say the least. Well, on the other hand, you could try to criticize some of what Walker brings to the table, but he's a fighter that's going to figure it all out. And what I like about Walker, too, is that his ground game is pretty nasty. When he gets on top of you, and in fact, that's how I see this fight going down. I think he's going to close the distance, get Cerqueira down to the mat, and ground and pound him, and kind of flatten him out and finish him up. Walker's jiu-jitsu is pretty good, and he's big. And when he's on top of you, Good luck getting him off. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to get Menifee down consistently as that fight went on. He was so close to getting some of those takedowns. That would have, without a doubt, would have been the difference in the fight. But it was a great learning experience, as I said, and I think you guys know where we're going with this. So I have Walker winning this fight, getting the finish via ground and pound, getting a TKO, landing strikes down on the mat. Walker opened up as a minus 255 on some of these books, and he is now as high as a minus 600. We're seeing drastic action coming on him, and I completely understand where it's coming from. Cerqueira it seems to be a fraud. We have a battle here between Team Alpha Male and Team Rufus Sport. Both these fighters, Andre Fili and Christian Rodriguez, come into this bout off losses to the same man, Mel Costa. Both those fights went two very different ways, though. Some people feel that C-Rod won that fight against Costa. The MMA media scoring was about dead even on it. It was a very closely contested match. On the other hand, Costa goes out there and finishes up Fili. Both these fighters are at very different points in their careers. Andre Fili, he's been around for a long time. He's the respected journeyman. He's in his mid-30s now. He just had, I believe, just had his first child. On the other hand, C-Rod is only 27 years old, and he's so mature for his age. And of course, all these fighters that we're talking about want to make a run at the title. I mean, that's their dream. But I think you could say deep down, C-Rod would be pretty happy if he was able to kind of replicate what Fili has done, holding on to a UFC roster spot all the way to his mid-30s. Okay, we would be talking about C-Rod battling in the octagon for another 8 years to come. I mean, he has to have those kind of aspirations deep down. And I'm sure he respects a lot of the work that Fili has done. Now, Fili will have that length advantage. You could say he's the bigger fighter. Remember, C-Rod was fighting in the bantamweight division for a very long time. He only recently came up to the featherweight division. He's now 2-2, fighting at 145 inside the UFC with some respectable performances. I know a lot of people don't believe he defeated Isaac Dalgarian, but you still have to be pretty impressed with how he fought that fight. And he took out the youngster Austin Bashi. But I think that C-Rod will be able to handle the striking against Fili. Okay, the way that C-Rod closes the distance, he's very technical, fighting under Duke Rufus, and he does a lot of things similarly to what we saw Pettis do years ago. He's very slick, and I don't see him having an issue closing the distance. I trust him in those striking exchanges. I say that he even gets the better of them. I just think that he's a little bit more of a trustworthy fighter anywhere this fight goes. If we see a fighter look to implement some grappling, I think that C-Rod would get the better of a fight that played out like that. I mean, how can you forget some of the more recent performances that Fili has had? I mean, we talked about the Costa fight, the common opponent. I mean, he slipped on a banana peel and was caught in a choke there at the end of the first round when he was starting to have some success with his striking. He was knocked out by Dan Ige in the first round, and Dan Ige, I don't know, say what you will about Ige. I don't know how well that fight has aged. I think it's looked even worse to an extent. Nathaniel Wood had a lot of success using grappling against him. Brito KO'd him back in the day. Bryce Mitchell had a lot of success using his grappling. I mean, there's just been questionable performances as you scroll down his resume over the last couple of years. And he's had a couple bounce back victories. The Cub Swanson fight was so close. A lot of people thought that Cub should have won that fight. That was a back and forth type of fight. The real standout victory for him was where he caught Lucas Almeida in the first round with the big strike and showed some of that plus power he has at times. But I wouldn't be too trustworthy in it here. C-Rod has never been knocked out. He's slick defensively. He's not easy to hit. You take a look at the numbers here. He's only absorbing 2.66 strikes per minute. I think that C-Rod will prove to be the fighter that just has a lot more left to give the fight game. I think that he's just a fresher vehicle that has more mileage to give. And okay, yeah, I will quickly note where he made a blatant error against Julian Erosa and was submitted in the first round. But I just think that was a true outlier. And Uros is an underrated fighter, but that was just an awkward loss for him. And I just don't think that we'll consistently see anything happen like that. And Fili is not that threat. Okay, he's not that threat. So you would have to say he makes an error. C-Rod makes an error and gets caught with some big strikes, or maybe he's out volume to a decision. But I like C-Rod here. I do. And I'm going to say that C-Rod wins this fight. As we take a look at the line, he opened up right around a minus 300. The line's coming down. He's currently at a minus 220. And as far as my official prediction for this fight, I'm going to say C-Rod wins it via decision. but I do believe that the submission is potentially live here. If Fili is not locked in, if he's not fully mentally locked into this fight, I could see C-Rod taking advantage of a mistake and maybe getting on his back and sinking in a rear naked choke and frustrating Fili. And who knows what would be next for Fili after a loss like that. But I do believe the submission is live, but I will favor C-Rod chugging along and winning a decision, which we've seen him do quite often, right? The vast majority of his victories inside the UFC have been by way of decision. I think that we see that here once again. Hey, you guys, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, smash that like button and subscribe if you're new here. So many big things are coming up on the horizon. I appreciate your support very much. Now, if you guys remember, Iasmin Lucindo comes into this fight off of a very disappointing performance where she took the loss against Amanda Lemos. And it wasn't just the fact that she lost that bout. It was the way that she lost it, right? Amanda Lemos is a fighter that brings in plus power, plus striking. But Lemos went out there and used her grappling to pretty much drown Lucindo, specifically late in that fight. And Lucindo was coming into that bout with a lot of hype and momentum behind her. She was on a 4-fight winning streak. The only loss that she took was in her UFC debut, but she was so young at the time. She's still so young, right? And in that loss, it was against a fighter in Iasmin, who was very respected as she worked her way into the UFC. And she's had some questionable performances, but we understand why Lucindo's stock was so high going into the Lemos fight. But now there is a major question mark based around her grappling. And I'll be the first to admit that fight really did surprise me, right? She was controlled for 8 minutes. She was taken down 3 times on 5 attempts by Lemos. And it did surprise me because I feel that Lucindo has shown some flashes with her BJJ, right? We've been most impressed with her striking, certainly. But I thought that she showed flashes with her jiu-jitsu. And if you keep up to date with her, you see her on Instagram and you see her in the gi rolling around often. So it just was a surprising performance. Now, is Angela Hill going to be the type of fighter that's going to be able to go out there and take advantage of those holes in her game? I'm not so sure about that. Angela Hill is a fighter that has had very questionable grappling throughout her career. It's gotten better, okay? But the strength of Angela Hill is her striking, which she does so well, and what has finally led her to getting over the 500 hump, right? She was always a fighter that was right around being a 500 fighter, even though we understand she had almost all of her professional fights in the UFC, so that it's not as bad of a look, but she finally got over the hump, and a lot of that was due to her doing what she does best, which is fighting in closely contested matches, using her striking to get the better of the opponent, or just to slightly be ahead of the opposition in these closely contested bouts. And then that's kind of how I see this fight going. I think that this is going to be another fight where Angela Hill participates in a very closely contested striking affair. I'm not banking on Angela Hill having enough success changing levels and taking down the youngster Lucindo here. I mean, it's possible, but I'm not banking on that. I'm going to say that Lucindo comes back sharper than ever. That was a learning experience that she just had, and I say she stuffs the takedowns enough, or is able to work back up to her feet enough that we see this fight be a battle of two strikers where it should play out very closely. I'm going to say Lucindo gets the better of Angela Hill, just being a little bit slicker and just being a little bit sharper defensively. You take a look at the numbers. Angela Hill is a fighter that has produced more offensively from a number standpoint, but she has also absorbed quite a bit more, and it translates to tape. When you watch Lucindo on tape, I think that she is pretty sharp with her striking technically and defensively. I think she could avoid some of Angela Hill's threats that she brings there. And the biggest thing that I have to talk about is the fact that Angela Hill is now 40 years old. We've been having this conversation for years when it comes to Angela Hill. We've been having this conversation right here on the show for the last 3-4 years. And I've been one that gave in and said, you know, I'm not going to look at Angela Hill as an aging fighter, because she has proven that she is aging like fine wine. She's getting better and better. She came into MMA a little bit late in life, and she's had a lot of success doing what she does. But I just, with her being 40 and Lucindo being 23, you could look at it two ways. You could say, oh, Lucindo's still so green, especially coming off that last performance. But I'm going to say Lucindo takes a drastic step forward. And you know, look at the amount of professional experience she has. She got into the fight game very early. So her 23 is not your typical 23. She has 23 professional fights. I'm going to say that she's ready for this spot here. She's motivated, and she could do enough to squeak by with the decision victory over Angela Hill. And I think we may start to see Angela Hill take a step off the platform and start to see these losses handed to her and eventually cruise into retirement, where I wouldn't be surprised if she gets a spot in the booth. We'll head over to the betting odds, where we see Lucindo right around a -190 right now. She opened up as a -200 and it came all the way down to a -150, which is where I think the fight's more. Oh, I have Lucindo capped more around being a -150, 160. Okay, so I'm not really in agreement with this current line. I wouldn't want to chalk up -200, -190 on Lucindo after that last performance. And Angela Hill is just, she's made a name for herself participating in these very closely contested bouts. So you don't want to be sitting there with the -200, -190 ticket in a split decision type of fight, which this very well could be. So the value's on the underdog in Hill, and she has proven to be a value underdog for years. And I still think that will be the case, but she'll be a slight step behind and she will lose. I'll say she loses a split decision, or maybe unanimous, 2-1 rounds. I still believe Hill will take a round. But I think that the youngster digs deep and gets redemption here in the octagon. Eryk Anders takes on Christian Leroy Duncan. And in a recent episode, in fact, I believe it was in our last episode where we were talking about Andrei Puliov, I mentioned CLD. I was circling to a fight that they had between each other. And I had somebody hit the comment section up below telling me how I was wrong and how crazy I was to talk of CLD in a positive light. I'll sit right here once again and I'll let you know that I think that CLD brings in some solid attributes to this division. And I think that he will put it together and will have a decent amount of success in the UFC. I would say that hater probably lost some money betting CLD in either the Arman Petrosian or Gregory Rodriguez fights. And I understand why you're upset, but I can kind of explain those fights and why CLD is taking a step forward and is going to continue to take a step forward in the near future here. So, of course, it's the Arman Petrosian fight that's going to even look worse than the Rodriguez L. And, I'll just say this. He came into the UFC, had that victory over Dusko due to the injury that took place on Dusko's leg. But Petrosian stylistically was a good matchup, from his standpoint to face CLD, right? He brings in solid striking, so he was going to be able to hang with him there. CLD got a little cocky to kick that fight off, and he had his back up against the wall there. He was getting a little crazy with his striking. He was acting like it was a sparring session, and we saw the fundamentals of Petrosian be the difference there. But Petrosian's not a bad kickboxer. He's just not a great mixed martial artist, and I would have liked to have seen CLD look to take some different routes, mixing things up, but he didn't really have those tools at the time. I think CLD is continuously sharpening up and he's getting better there. But you see what he brings to the table when he's matched up against these lower level fighters like Claudio Ribeiro or Dennis Teolinin and Andrei Puliov. I mean, you see the fact that his striking can really frustrate the opposition, the way he switches stances. He has a solid frame. He has solid power. He can knock you out. And, the Gregory Rodriguez is a top 10 fighter in this division, or he's a fringe top 10 fighter. He is dangerous as hell. So that loss, I mean, what do you expect? A lot of fighters in this division are going to take L's against Gregory, especially when they're at the point that CLD is at, right? Being under 30 at the time. I believe he was like 29. And there's a lot of room for growth here. This matchup is a perfect matchup for him. Eryk Anders comes in off the Chris Weidman knockout. Chris Weidman's a shell of himself. I don't believe that Anders is going to have a lot to offer CLD in this matchup. And I think that this fight's going to look very similarly, maybe not to the extent of the Khalil Roundtree versus Anders fight that we saw years ago, where the speed, the stance switching, and the Muay Thai skills of Roundtree at the time just were light years ahead of Anders. Anders has this slow, plotty type of style. He has good power. But if you move well in there against him, if you circle and use your footwork, you can tee off on him for 15 rounds. And maybe you could even find a KO, which it's not easy to do. Anders is very tough and durable. He's only been knocked out once before. So, I mean, I do understand the durability's there, but he's 38 years old, and CLD has 8 knockout victories out of his 11 wins, right? 8 stoppages. So I definitely believe that he's live to find a stoppage here. It's tough, because Anders is tough, but at 38 and he's going to take a lot of damage in this fight. How is that going to play out? I kind of want to go with a knockout victory here for CLD. It's hard to do though. It's hard to do with the durability of Anders. But I want to be clear. I think that CLD is going to land a lot in this fight. He's going to inflict a lot of damage, and he's either going to cruise his way to a unanimous decision, or Anders is going to get busted up, and there may be some type of TKO stoppage going on here. All in all, I'm going to go with the decision victory. I'll give Anders that much respect just because he has proven to be so damn tough and durable. But I do say that CLD gets his hand raised comfortably. I'll say he wins a unanimous decision. Take a look at these odds. Anders is as high as a plus 425 right now, where he opened up around a plus 330. So even with him opening up as a big dog, you're seeing a lot of action come in on CLD. I am in agreement with this line movement. You see CLD opening up around a minus 400. He's now minus 600. It would have been a really nice parlay piece, grabbing it around minus 400, 500, at minus 600. Maybe you still want to do that. I think he wins this fight, man. The speed, the stance switching, all that is going to be too much for Anders. I'm telling you guys right now, CLD wins this fight comfortably. In the bantamweight division, we have Miles Johns taking on Gene Matsumoto. And Gene Matsumoto, he comes off of a controversial loss. I was on record saying I really did not like the decision. Now, that was a good fight card for me. I'll also throw that in there, but that was one of the L's that we took on our official plays, and I was very frustrated with the decision. As yes, it was a close fight, but I thought that Matsumoto, using his grappling specifically, did enough to take the fight, but he was also handling the striking very well with Font. Font did some damage too, and he was aggressive with his striking, but I thought that was Matsumoto's fight. But we take a look at the media scoring, and we do see that a couple of them had Font winning the fight, about 4. Okay, but the vast majority of the media had Matsumoto winning that fight with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, so it was a 9-4 ratio there as far as the media scoring goes, and you know I like to bring that up when it favors what I'm talking about. So, but quite honestly, man, I just really believe that Matsumoto won that fight, and it was a learning lesson. If I remember correctly, he took that fight on short notice. He did take that fight on short notice, and it still didn't make me shy from targeting him. He was undefeated at the time, so he's coming off his first loss. I expect to see him very motivated here. Now, Miles Johns, I just saw him fight live. That was in Tampa, where he took on Felipe Lima, and he was really overwhelmed in that match. Okay, he lost every single round. All right, he was out-grappled. He was taken down 2 times on 5 attempts, controlled for about 3 minutes. He was outstruck almost 2-1. And, the more I look at Miles Johns, I feel that a lot of the success that he's had in the octagon is due to him getting solid matchmaking, if you will. I mean, you could put some respect on Douglas Silva de Andrade's name, but he's getting up. He was up there in age, and they traded back and forth late. And Cody Gibson, Daniel Argueta, Vince Morales, Anderson Dos Santos, Kevin Natividad, these are not really household names. And you can go all the way back to his UFC debut, where he took on Cole Smith. And I remember having big money on him in that spot. And that was a fight where I was really on the edge of my bar stool. I remember watching that one closely, and I was jumping out of my seat when he won because it played out closely. And I just think that fight, it really showed who he was then and who he was to become, because he was never really going to be that guy. He's not going to be that guy here. Matsumoto is going to be able to replicate a lot of what Felipe Lima did in that last match. Matsumoto switches stances. He's not the most explosive or athletic striker, okay, but he's very accurate, and he'll push the pace on you. And I see him just being more measured, more technical than Miles. Miles will come way out from east and west, as I like to say, throwing those bombs, those big power hooks. And if he doesn't land something huge and shake things up, I just don't see him ahead in this fight. And Matsumoto's young. He's shown to be durable. I think that he'll eat anything that he throws at him. And if we do see a KO, right, it's Miles Johns that has made those blatant mistakes in the cage and has been finished up. Right, you think about the Mario Batista flying knee. I believe it was a flying knee that he got caught with back then. He also was finished by John Castaneda, got caught with that arm triangle choke late there. And I've never been that high in John Castaneda. So, I mean, I think that Matsumoto is really due for a big bounce back victory here. And we've seen Matsumoto open up right around a minus 225. He touched as high as a minus 400 on these early opening odds. And I'm on these lines early, man, as I'm recording this. And now he dipped back to a minus 275. So I'm interested to see where this line trends. But I like Matsumoto. Anything minus 300 and down, I think, is just fine. Maybe if this goes back up to the minus 400, caution yourself a little bit there. But I like Matsumoto. I think he's the superior fighter here, and he should get the job done as it goes to the judges' scorecards. Is this do or die for old Astro Boy here? Good old Steve Erceg comes into this match here against Ode Osbourne on a 3-fight losing skid. He's still ranked. He's ranked 10th in the flyweight division. Take note, this fight is supposed to be taking place at 135 with Ode Osbourne taking this fight on short notice. This is the third opponent that Erceg has had, right? He was supposed to be taking on Hyun-Sung Park. Park had to withdraw to face Tetsuro Taira, and then Erceg was scheduled to take on Alex Perez, and Perez withdrew. So here we go. He's taking on Ode Osbourne. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is if Osbourne's going to have success in this fight, I do believe he's going to have to shake things up but by doing something big early on in this fight. And it probably will start with his hands. We have seen some big power from him at times, not consistently, but there's been some flash moments. He's coming off of a knockout finish over Luis Guriel, who had some hype behind him coming into that fight. I believe that was his UFC debut, and that was a big-time KO. You could circle back to the knockout that he had over the kickboxer Adeshev, right? That was a nice performance that he had there. He knocked out Jerome Rivera back in the day. I mean, so we've seen some power from him at times. And the reason why I bring that up, of course, is because when you think of the most blatant loss that Erceg has had as of recently was the Kai Kara-France loss, where he got caught in the first round and he was looking nice and measured before being landed on. And I would feel very confident in saying that if we didn't see like a flash K or something crazy happen in that fight, and that fight went the distance, the vast majority of the time you would have saw Erceg win that fight. But he got caught. And even in these lower weight classes, if you get hit, flush, you can be put out. So I do think that if Osbourne is going to have success in this fight, it's going to start there. Even if he doesn't get a flash KO, he has to hurt Erceg, because if this fight goes into cruise control, I do believe that Erceg is going to be a clear step ahead in the grappling exchanges, and his kickboxing is quite technical. It's pretty underrated. We saw him have a very closely contested match against Alexandre Pantoja in that championship bout. Don't forget about that. Came down to a round, and I know since then he lost 2 more fights, and he pretty much was just handled by Brandon Moreno. It was clear that he lost 4 of the 5 rounds in that fight. But Moreno, he's the truth. He's really one of the greatest flyweights to have ever done it. So you put respect on his name as well. But Ode Osbourne, he's not Brandon Moreno. You could say maybe he has similar power to Kai Kara-France, but Kai Kara-France is a technical kickboxer too. So I don't know if Ode is quite on that level. I think that Erceg is going to have a big bounce back victory here. And with Erceg having more time to prepare for this fight, I really think that Erceg can take advantage of him and can eventually put himself in position to find a sub. So I'm going to say Erceg gets a mid to late round submission. I'm going to say he finds the finish in this fight, and it's much needed. He needs to go out there and show out if he wants to get that respect put back on his name. He can't just squeak by with the victory. He needs to really show out. I think he could do that. He opened up right around a -350. We see him as a -400 now. He's a pretty big favorite, and I mean, I think that the line is pretty accurate, right around 350, 400. It's another time I'm saying it's an accurate line, and I don't know if I would push you guys to be throwing action on it. Maybe you look more for a prop target where you can get better value. Maybe you're looking at Erceg to win this fight via decision or inside the distance, and you can get a little bit better value. That's what I would say there. If you want to work with me for my official plays, do not hesitate to shoot me an email or shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'll give you further details. We've been on absolute fire, and I got some official targets that I'm looking to smash on for this card. Reach out to me. Here we go. Ranked middleweight action set to take place in the main event. Number 9, Roman Dolidze takes on the number 10th ranked Anthony Hernandez. And that number 10th ranking next to his name really has me scratching my head, because I think he's the dark horse in this division. He's one of the dark horses. I guess you could kind of circle to a couple fighters in the top 10, top 15. But Hernandez thrives in these 25-minute, 5-round type of fights. That's his type of style, okay? It makes so much of a difference, in my opinion, of Hernandez being in a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight. And that's going to pay dividends as he starts to be in these headliner spots or tries to fight for the title. Okay, Roman Dolidze, he's 37 years old now. It's do or die for him. He comes into this fight on a 3-fight winning streak. I think that the winning streak is a little bit overvalued when you take into consideration Anthony Smith has looked really bad as he cruised into retirement. Kevin Holland, not even trying to be a hater. You guys know our little fun thing we do, but I think that Kevin Holland is one of the more overrated fighters in the fight game, especially up at 185. Okay, and then Marvin Vettori, he got redemption in the rematch, but Vettori was coming off a very tough injury, and he's talked about how hesitant that he was in that fight, and I'll give him credit for that W there, but Vettori just came up short once again against Brendan Allen. Meanwhile, you talk about Brendan Allen, we're going to do some MMA math here. How about Hernandez going out there defeating him once again, where he outstruck him 30-14, had a great deal of success using his wrestling once again. He outgrappled him, hit 4 of his 8 takedown attempts, controlled him for 10 minutes and 22 seconds. Brendan Allen is not easy to take down and outgrapple. Okay, he's a well-rounded fighter, but I would say, even though Allen's striking has really came around, it's his grappling that's his strong suit. So that shows you how damn good Hernandez is there. And in a 25-minute type of war, I would have to feel that Hernandez, with his better cardio and all that, could have some success down there. Now, when it comes to the striking, Hernandez is a little bit more unorthodox and a little wild with his striking. We've seen him march fighters down with his hands down, sticking his tongue at them and doing all of that. And I don't know if he wants to do that here necessarily, because Dolidze has shown some plus power. Okay, you got to be careful. You get a little too cocky, you get whacked upside your head from Dolidze. Before you know it, you're stumbling and maybe you get TKO'd. So, I mean, I don't want to see Hernandez bringing in that type of style with his hands down low. I hope he fights a technical fight, takes this fight seriously. And in that case, I think he's the better fighter, the better striker, the better grappler, the volume that he's going to put out there. Okay, you take a look at the numbers here. He's landing about 1 more significant strike per minute. But more importantly, he's absorbing a very low 2.61 strikes per minute. And I just think that he will be a step ahead, even in a striking affair. You mix things up, especially with that cardio. He's just a better mixed martial artist. And I think that he is a nightmare matchup for specific fighters in this division. Not so much Dolidze, because Dolidze does check off a lot of boxes. He'll be prepared, but I think he'll be a step behind. But Hernandez is a nightmare matchup for specific types of fighters. When you think back to the Michel Pereira fight where he got that late finish, submitted Roman Kopylov. If you're not up to par with your grappling and with your cardio, he will break you down and he will finish you up. And there's some respectable finishes going on here. Finished up Marc-Andre Barriault, finished up Edmund Shabazian. We talked about Roman Kopylov, Michel Pereira. I mean, his resume does run pretty deep, even when you think back to that Rodolfo Vieira fight. What a war that was. But the way he pulled off the submission, right, caught him in that arm and guillotine choke against one of the more polished jiu-jitsu players in the division. I mean, he showed that he's willing to take the fight anywhere against any kind of fighter. He has that type of heart and demeanor. So, I mean, that's that X factor that he brings into the cage. So, yes, I have him winning this fight. Can he find the finish? He has 25 minutes to do it. Dolidze has never been finished. This is another one where I think that maybe we could see a late finish, but it's hard to count Dolidze out in that manner just because he's been so tough and durable. I'm going to lean towards this fight going towards the decision, with Hernandez winning a unanimous decision victory. I'll say Dolidze wins 1 round. I'm going to say Hernandez wins this 4-1 on the scorecards, but it does make it to that final bell. Hernandez just needs to watch that plus power of Dolidze's. We take a look at the line here, and the line is in agreement with what we've been talking about, which I was a little surprised to see. I thought maybe we would see a little bit more respect on Dolidze's name, but no, it's not the case. Hernandez is right around a -300 right now. He opened up as a -300, was a -370 for a bit, and now he's back towards a -310 favorite. And I think that that's actually an accurate line, because with a fighter like Hernandez, with the cardio that he has, he's just so reliable. Okay, and the only way, it's not the only way, but the more realistic way he would lose this fight is if he runs into a knockout. And he's only been finished once before, and you know who that was by. Your boy Kevin Holland. But I think that was just a real outlier. He slipped on a banana peel there, and he's came a long way since, and I don't see Dolidze getting that knockout. All right, guys, that's going to wrap this one up. Got to throw a couple parting words your way. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been seeing a lot of the stuff that they're throwing into your face on the news. Just always, when you're seeing these things thrown at you, no matter what it is, okay, I'm talking about it from all aspects, just know that a lot of times there are motives behind it, and there's way bigger chess moves going on in the background than you could even imagine. All right, so just don't get caught up and all that stuff. Don't waste any of your energy. You could be aware to whatever realities you have, you know, depending, no matter what side of the things you're on, and in a variety of conversations, right? Everyone has a side. Everyone, you know, is from a certain, they think of things from a certain point, right? Point of view. But just don't get too caught up in that. Focus more on what you're doing and what you got going on and what you care about. All right. Focus more on that. Don't get consumed by the nonsense, because you're really not going to get anything from it. I promise you guys that. You're looking at these things that are going on. I mean, just be smart and analyze your surroundings and where you're at and your safety. And I mean that from all angles. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always different sides of stories, and everyone feels like everyone's out to get them. But just analyze your reality, make sure you're grounded, and you're making the right moves to benefit yourself. Leave you guys with that. Signing out. Teller.
The Teller. The Teller. The Teller.